Hello, and welcome back to my personal hell. The hell that I've trapped myself in on purpose for your entertainment. Haha, that's a joke. It's actually for my entertainment. Y'all just get to watch. I've had both Dustpelt and Fern and Graystripe's family trees on my list for ages, but both family trees are so small that I decided to combine them. That is, they're small when we only look at those pairs and their immediate children. I've already covered Fern and Graystripe's ancestors, so check out the Whitestorm's family tree video for that if you missed it. So that you aren't stuck waiting around for a relative who's never gonna show up, here's every cat whose genes are getting mercilessly sliced into jorts this evening. As for Spiderleg's unfortunate progeny, they'll be covered in a future Daisy's family tree video. If you want to see any other grandkids, let me know in the comments. Let's do Dustfern first. What, me? Hiding behind Dustfern to further procrastinate Graystripe? No, come on, I could never. Okay, that's enough, let's go. I've already covered Ferncloud, go watch the Whitestorm's video, but here's a rundown of what we ended up with. Black, diluted to blue, with 2 recessive little d's, a capital A for a goatee to make her tabby. That tabby is then modified into a mackerel shape by capital MC. She also has a ton of spotting polygenes that break up the mackerel into spotted. Spotting polygenes seem to only work on mackerel, so that's why she needs a capital MC there. She also required some white from Whitestorm, so she's got a bit of that, represented by 1 S. S is the allele for white spotting, and it's co-dominant. 2 S's make the cat high white, which is over 50% white, but because Ferncloud only has 1 S and 1 W for no white, they balance out and make low white, which is under 50% white. White, it does not sound like a word anymore. Oh, and she's short hair, represented by capital L. However, her dad was a long hair, which is recessive, so he had to be homozygous, which means that she's carrying 1 little L from him. Recap over. Where's Dustpelt? Get over here. Okay, this is hilarious. Wiki says that he's dirt-colored, which is the euphemism that the cats canonically use to refer to poop. He's poop-colored, they call him poop-colored. Okay. Dustpelt's poopy fur is dark brown. I'm gonna make him chocolate in the hopes of maybe he'll smell a bit better. All of the eumelin-based black bases share a locus. In dominance order, black is capital B, chocolate is little b, and cinnamon is B1. I'm going to give him 1 little b, but I'm leaving the second allele intentionally blank in case we need something else here later. Being a tabby, he's going to get at least 1 capital A. As for what kind of tabby, I've always imagined a mackerel, which is the tiger-like pattern, sharing a locus with recessive little MC, the blotchy classic pattern. So, like Ferncloud, he's getting at least 1 capital MC. He doesn't have any white, so he's getting 2 W's. He also isn't dilute, and dilution is coded for by the recessive little d, so he's getting at least 1 capital D. And lastly, I imagine him short hair, so he's getting at least 1 capital L. For those who missed the Whitestorm's family tree video, Dustpelt was apparently retconned into being a Robin Fuzzy kit later in life, and that would make his relationship with Ferncloud not great. So he's not theirs for our purposes. That's why we had to cover him brand new really quick. Okay, time for their kids. Let's start with Birchfall, since we already know a bit about him thanks to the Firestars family tree video. When I covered him then, I gave him a capital B for black and a capital A to make him a tabby, but I also gave him a little a to carry for his non-agouti daughter. I also gave him a capital D to stay undiluted, but that same daughter is blue, not black, so Birchfall is also carrying a recessive little d. He's also low white so that he can pass on his single S to his other daughter, who needs 2 S's for her high white. And lastly, he's a short hair thanks to his capital L, but he's also carrying little L for the long hair dovewing. Thankfully, all of this is pretty easy to accomplish with his parent setup. Ferncloud is going to give him her capital B so that he's black. However, because Dustpelt, so far, only has little b's to give due to being chocolate, Birchfall is now carrying chocolate. Either parent can give him their capital A, either parent could give him his little a too. But since Whitestorm has a non-agouti parent, I'm going to say that she gave her little a to Whitestorm, who gave it to Ferncloud, who gave it to Birchfall. Ferncloud's also giving Birchfall his single S allele. However, she can't give him a capital D because she's only got little d's. That works out because he needs one of those for his daughter anyway. He can get his capital D from Dustpelt. Mackerel can come from either parent. I don't think Dustpelt has any spotted alleles, or at least not enough to significantly impact him, so Birchfall just happened to fall onto Daddy's end of the gradient. As for hair length heterozygosity, both parents are also short hair, so either could pass their capital L. Ferncloud's definitely carrying little L thanks to Whitestorm, and there's no reason Dustpelt can't also do that, so it doesn't really matter which parents those come from. That's Birchfall done, easy. Next is, oh Jesus fuck, hi Ice Cloud. There is an allele that makes a cat fully white, WD. but it's dominant, so if neither parent has it, neither can she. There's two ways I can handle Ice Cloud instead. One is the homozygosity route, and one is the albino route. To explain the homozygosity route, sometimes homozygous SS cats end up fully white. They're born with van spots that go away as they grow up. This is what I did for Whitestorm. In order to go this route, I would need to not only give Dustpelt white, but enough of it to quell my personal sense of realism that his piebald polygenes could contribute to a fully white cat. The albino route is less likely, but simpler and non-disruptive to Dustpelt's design. In this route, instead of going for a leucistic white, we go for, well, an albino white. Full albino, the little C allele on the C locus. This is a very rare allele, so I'm not inclined to throw it around too much, but we already established in a previous video that Ice Cloud's aunt, Frostfur, is albino. It's completely reasonable for Frostfur's sister, Brindleface, to have gotten a little C from one of her parents and gave it to Fern Cloud, who gave it to Ice Cloud. How did Dustpelt get it? I don't know. We unretconned his parents to erase the icky gross, so now I have no idea who his parents are. He has it, that's what matters. And if you're wondering, wouldn't that give Ice Cloud red eyes? No, it wouldn't. Blue eyes reflect red because of their tapetum lucidum lacking pigment, which isn't unique to albinos, but it can confuse folks in photos. Albino cats have blue eyes with a bit of a pinkish tint. Actually, while we're on the subject of eye color, now is a good time for me to give my standard we don't know jack or shit about eye color genes except for a handful of blues and one specific green disclaimer. I'm going with canon or whatever I feel like, unless those handful of genes comes up. What else does she have? Don't care. Albino is totally epistatic to basically everything else, so, oh shit, wait, fur length. I'll just make her a short hair. Same process as Birchfall. Fox sleep time. My only saving grace with this poor bastard is that the wiki calls him red-ish rather than red, because otherwise I'd have to kill someone. Specifically, he's a red-ish tabby. Normally with quote-unquote red cats who can't be genetically ginger due to having no ginger parents, I go nuts with Cinnamon, the most recessive B locus allele, called B1, that's naturally reddish. However, I guess Robin Wing could carry a B1 under her chocolate. Does that conflict with anyone? Did I ever give Whitestorm a second B locus allele? Look, these family trees are steadily becoming this family tree, and I can only keep track of so much. I double down and get into the weeds vying for Cinnamon anyway, if he was just called red, but he's red-ish, and there's a lot of ways that can happen. High rufousing comes to mind. Rufousing is a polygenetic trait. It affects how much pheomelanin is in the red banding of the goatee hairs. Cats with lower rufousing are duller colored, and cats with higher rufousing are more saturated. Sometimes even, well, reddish. Fully red-looking brown tabbies, like Abyssinians, Somalis, and fun Firestar headcanons, come from extreme levels of rufousing. Fern Cloud's blue, and rufousing doesn't tend to show up as much on blue cats unless it's pretty dang high. I don't want to see any on her, though. And Dustpelt can have whatever rufousing he wants, basically. So if Fern Cloud is mid-ish rufousing and Dustpelt has a decent amount, it's reasonable for Foxleap to fall a little further than Dustpelt on the high end. Kids fall outside of their parents' gradients all the time. It's actually a very important concept in evolution. So Foxleap is just going to be a black-based tabby with a good amount of rufousing to give him a bit of reddishness. His stripes are still black, but I'll just say he's not particularly busy. He just happens to have fewer stripes, and also they're not very thick. That's perfectly normal and possible for him. That makes his genome actually very similar to Birchfall's. He's getting a goatee, mackerel, including the lack of spotted, and even short hair the same way as his brother. However, he doesn't have any white. So instead of Fern Cloud's S allele, he'll be getting her W. Good for him. To really sell it, though, I'll make him chocolate. Dustpelt is already chocolate, so it's easy to get a little bee from him. In the Whitestorm's family tree video, Robin Wing was also chocolate, and she gave one of her little bees to Brindleface. I'm gonna say Brindleface gave it to Fern Cloud, so that Fern Cloud gave it to Foxleap. Poor Shrewpaw was, quote, dark brown, and not described or depicted as a tabby. That's going to make him solid chocolate, for that same method as Foxleap. He's going to get one of his little A's in a similar way. In order to not be a tabby, a cat needs to have two little A's, as little A is the non-agouti allele. Brindleface's other parent, Fuzzy Pelt, was non-agouti, so he gave one of his little A's to Brindleface, who gave it to Fern Cloud, who gave it to Shrewpaw. The other one just comes from Dustpelt. He's carrying little A now, it's fine. Just like Foxleap, he'll be getting one W from each parent. He'll also be short hair via the same means as all previous siblings. Lastly, Whitestorm is carrying the hit by a car allele from his mom, which passes through Fern Cloud onto him. Wait, does that mean Dustpelt is carrying it too? Oh no. Okay, that last one was a joke, but it was a very important joke, because it bought me time while I desperately try to think of what the fuck to do for Spiderleg. Spiderleg has been a gigantic headache. Jokes about Graystripe aside, he's actually been my single biggest barrier to working on this video. Spiderleg is described as black with a brown belly, and there's no genes for that. I don't do point mutations or chimeras here unless they're actually, like, part of the character, so having him be mixed black and chocolate is right out. That can't happen. I racked my brain for this for quite a while. I was even looking at photos of an extinct breed called the Chantilly Tiffany, who tend to have lighter chests for unknown reasons. The standard answer here is he's tarnished. Black cats who spend a lot of time in the sun can sometimes get kinda brownish, particularly in areas that are exposed to the sun. I can see deadbeat-ass Spiderleg kinda lazing around, sunning his belly, and getting a brownish tint down there. This is also known as rusting. Granted, tarnishing isn't a genetic trait or even particularly developmental. It's a phenotype that occurs after birth. But the only image we have of Spiderleg as a kid is, oh Jesus, what the fuck is that? But that answer didn't satisfy me. First off, it wouldn't only affect his belly, even if he was lazing around on his back all day instead of raising his kids. Second, it only shows up in certain lighting. And third, it's just kind of a lame answer. No offense to folks who use it, it's perfectly serviceable as an answer, and it was mine for a long time, but for a video like this, I feel like I need something trickier, flashier. I can't take credit for this one, but I can't give it to any specific person either. A couple of different commenters chatting in different places at different times each said it, and honestly, it's genius. So kudos to you if you're one of those people. Now presenting Cold Sepia Spiderleg. Sepia is a type of color point like Siamese, but less intense. It's also, like Siamese, temperature sensitive. Color point cats in cooler environments and/or with cooler body temperatures will have darker fur than color point cats in hotter environments or who run hotter. Since the internal temperatures of a mammal tend to run hottest where all the organs are working, color point cats are darkest at their face, legs, tail, and ears, hence their points. And as they get colder and colder, those points creep inward, a gradient appears up their butt and down their spine, and then down their flanks. The underside of the cat, where the organs work hard and run hot, is the last to go dark. And the neck. The neck is also usually pretty light. Lots of blood flow. I think a cold sepia would work great for making Spiderleg make literally any sense. It's a little difficult to pull off, though. You see, we already know that Fern Cloud, for Ice Cloud's sake, has to be carrying a little C on her C locus. Well, color points alleles are also on the C locus, and they're dominant over little c. White Storm's mom is mink. That's the heterozygous condition between the Siamese and sepia alleles, which are incompletely dominant. But if he got CB from her and gave it to Fern Cloud, she'd have both CB from dad and little c from mom, making her sepia too. In order to stay non-albino full color and keep Ice Cloud albino, she needs a non-albino full color capital C from dad instead. What about Dustpelt? The same problem. If we pretend he got a CB allele from either of his unknown parents, well, he still has that little c, so that would turn him sepia. Given that sepia is very dark and doesn't affect eye color, I personally think it's worth the change. Spiderleg got his running cold from dad too. I can live with sepia Dustpelt for Spiderleg to make sense, but if you can't, then yeah, he's just tarnished. The rest is straightforward. He's non-dilute black and short hair like certain siblings before him, he's not a tabby, and he has no white. So that's the Dustpelt Fern Cloud kids. For the record, I do enjoy comments that are like, "Random kit, no!" when I leave out someone who died before apprenticehood. They make me giggle and smile. But to briefly explain, so many plot-irrelevant kittens die off-screen that not only do I not care about their genotype since they aren't really characters, but also including them would take way longer and be a lot more work for no real benefit, so I leave them out. I do try to include dead kits who matter to the story, like Moss Kit and the upcoming Yellowfangs kits, but the majority just don't matter enough to me, so you'll have to figure out the plot nobodies like Larch Kit on your own. Sorry. Oh, hello? Yes? I have to cover Graystripe's family tree now or you'll kill my family? Okay. Okay. So normally I write these scripts in one sitting over about an hour. Then a few days later, I'll come back to it, troubleshoot, grammar check, fail to notice when I get someone's name wrong, etc. However, after I wrote out that phone bit, I got up, made dinner, ate dinner, watched a few videos, got up again, went outside and took a walk for like 20 minutes, came back inside, pooped on the toilet, went back to the kitchen, made a mixed drink, sat down, sipped it for a bit, chatted with Plausible in my YouTube comments for like a while, and then went back to the script. So, apologies to my captive family, I guess. The difficulty with Graystripe's family tree isn't that it's complicated or that it requires a lot of weird tricks or anything like that. It's difficult in that it's impossible. Like, it's not difficult mechanically, it's difficult emotionally. It's not difficult like a really hard puzzle is difficult. It's difficult in the way that having to tell your kid that you're getting divorced is difficult. My wonderful audience is my kids, and I cannot make Millie work. And I have to admit this to all of you now. Henceforth, this video's title changes from Genetically Realistic Family Tree to The Butchering of Millie, parentheses, graphic, specifically the butchering of her genome. It will not be pretty, I will not be happy, but it must be done. Oh, hang on. Hello? Okay, thanks. Apparently that counted as procrastinating. They're currently force-feeding my dad infinite donuts, and he's gonna explode like the gluttony guy in 7 if I don't get started. Graystripe is another White Storm baby, thanks to popular fanon and a community post I made a while ago, so we already have some of his genome down. He's blue, which is dilute black, so he has at least one capital B. He also has 2 little d's to dilute that black into blue. His titular Graystripe is the result of being ticked. Ticked is a modifier of a goatee, aka it's a pattern that tabbies can have, like Mackerel and Classic. Unlike Mackerel and Classic, however, it exists on its own locus, the TA locus. The recessive little TA codes for non-ticked, and the capital TA codes for ticked. It makes almost the entire pelt of goatee hairs, save for stripes on the face, legs, and tail. How much striping depends on a few things. One is polygenes, and one is incomplete dominance. Barring polygenes can add or take away stripes, leading to quite a variety. Low barring means fewer stripes, high barring means more stripes. To my knowledge, though, a cat needs to be homozygous in order to have the totally stripe-free look of the famous Abyssinian or Somali. Graystripe is about as far towards low barring as a heterozygote can get. It won't be as prominent in any realistic paintings of him, but ticked cats very often have darker backs than flanks, and I think stylizing that as a Graystripe is completely reasonable. Ticked is also epistatic over the MC locus. It doesn't matter what a cat has there if they have even a single capital TA allele, because capital TA overwrites it. We don't know what Graystripe has on his MC locus yet. We do know that in order to show his tickedness, though, he needs to be a goatee. So here's his capital A. His mom isn't a tabby, so he got a little a from her too. Like his half-sister Fern Cloud, Graystripe necessitated some white from homozygous White Storm. And lastly, being a long hair, he has 2 little L's. As for Millie, I'm going to make this butchering easier by going piecemeal. Well, not easier for her. Generally, being butchered is worse when it's slow and drawn out, but easier on me. I'm going to start with what she should look like, and then we'll change things as they're needed, okay? Okay, let's go. Millie is described as light gray on her wiki, but in the mangas and in the official Warriors website, she looks more lilac to me. Well, technically the manga portrays her as pink parentheses girl, but we're gonna go with lilac. Lilac is basically a tinted light gray in terms of appearance, so it's fine. Lilac is dilute chocolate, that means she has at least 1 little B allele and 2 little Ds. Enjoy them while they last. She's also a tabby, so she has at least 1 capital A, and is a mackerel, so that's at least 1 capital MC. I could have sworn she was also described as silver, and I was gonna make a joke about Graystripe clearly having a type, but I can't find that anywhere now. I already know she's going to need it for Bumblestripe, and it's not particularly disruptive to her design, so I'll just go ahead and do that now. Silver is the combination of a goatee and the inhibitor allele, capital I, which is dominant over the non-inhibitor allele, little I. Inhibitor erases the pheomelanin found in the bands of the goatee hairs, making them appear silvery. If a non-tabby has inhibitor, it causes the smoke phenotype instead. She's got no white, so that's 2 W's, and she's a short hair, so that's at least 1 capital L. Ready to die? Me too! Let's start with Bumblestripe. He is a black-silver tabby and a short hair. Short hair's easy, he's got Millie's capital L, but because Graystripe only has little L's to pass, Bumblestripe is carrying long hair. He can be a tabby via either parent's capital A, doesn't matter whose. He also gets silver via Millie's capital I. Graystripe isn't silver, so he only has little I's, which means Bumblestripe is heterozygous here. In his official art, he has a white muzzle. Since Graystripe already has to have some non-canonical white from White Storm, I'm going to justify it by giving it to Bumblestripe. Not necessary, and I think most designs of him don't include it, but it's a fun extra thing. Now for the part that hurts. Graystripe and Millie are both dilute. Since non-dilute's allele, capital D, is dominant, they can't carry it. That means one of them has to become non-canon, non-dilute. An astute fan in my comments suggested solving the problem through Graystripe to leave at least some of Millie intact. Their reasoning was that a very low rufous black tabby looks grayish enough for an untrained eye to think them blue. Kind of like how I use cinnamon and fawn as fake red and fake cream, respectively. The problem with that is that Graystripe's parents are also both dilute. Even White Storm, you ask? Yes, even White Storm, because both of his parents are dilute. In order to make Graystripe non-dilute black, we'd have to disrupt at minimum one more design. Also, I just don't like using low Rufus black as a blue stand-in for personal pet peeve reasons, but that's less important. Trust me, I'd take it here if I could. I'd take a pet peeve to save Millie from what I'm going to have to do to her, but I can't. We can't escape! We can't escape! So Millie is going to gain a capital D and become a black-silver tabby. I'm keeping her heterozygous out of spite. She gives her capital D to Bumblestripe, making him black. You may be thinking, Murphy, why not just make Bumblestripe a dark blue silver tabby? Blue can look very close to black, but black can't really look blue. Briarlight. The answer is Briarlight. She's also non-dilute, so even if Bumblestripe didn't need a capital D, she would. Briarlight is a, quote, dark brown cat and another short hair. Same process as Bumblestripe for that part. As established with Shrewpaw, dark brown is pretty solidly a chocolate. Pun intended, because she is also solid. Millie can give her one of her little bees no problem. Graystripe can carry it too, probably from Brindleface or something. It's recessive, so it's fine. As for solid, we can just say Millie carries Nonagoti, and Graystripe already has a little A from his mama, so that's all good at least. Canon Briarlight has blue eyes, but she can't without any white. Graystripe has white, so if it's important to you that Briarlight's eyes stay blue, she can get Graystripe's single S and one of Millie's W's. For my purposes, though, I think changing her eyes to green is less disruptive to her design than a splash of stark white, so that's what I'm doing instead. She's still getting one of Millie's W's, but Graystripe is also giving her his single W instead of his S, keeping her white free. And now we have Blossomfall. My good bitch Blossomfall, the final meat cleaver in Millie's character design. She's a calico. She's a calico. I don't have any tricks to fake a calico. Like I say with Spiderleg, without something like chimerism or a point mutation, cats can't be mixed black and cinnamon. Let me talk about Ginger for a minute and why it's so hard to work with. Ginger is sex-linked, represented by capital O. It's also co-dominant with non-Ginger's little o. A locus being sex-linked means it's located on a sex chromosome, in our case the X chromosome. Generally speaking, females have two X chromosomes, but males only have one because they have a Y instead. That means females can be homo or heterozygous, but males can only be hemizygous. This is why tortoiseshells are always female, barring chimerism, point mutations, or intersex chromosomal situations like Klinefelters. Torty is a heterozygous condition owing to the co-dominance of the yes ginger and no ginger alleles. Males can't be heterozygous, so they can't be tortoiseshells. Graystripe only has a single little o for no ginger and a Y chromosome. Millie's canon appearance would have two little o's because she has no ginger. Well, she does now. The only way for Blossomfall to be a torty is if she gets one capital O from someone and a little o from someone else. Graystripe can't give the capital O because he's a blue, read non-ginger, male. So red responsibility falls entirely on Millie. I'm so sorry, Millie, I really am. But you're a Torby now. She gives her single capital O to Blossomfall, and Graystripe passes on his single little o, taking her ass to Torty Town where she belongs. She's also black, non-agoti, and has white. We've covered each of these things with her siblings, so same processes. As for some of her white being little petal spots all over her body, we don't need to do anything special, that just happens sometimes. Lastly, Blossomfall is a long hair. Graystripe is also a long hair and gives her one of his little L's no problem. Millie, however, is a short hair. Thankfully, this final addition to Millie's genome will not hurt her. It's recessive, it's fine. Ooh, okay. Band-Aid ripped off. Let's take a cool-off lap with Silverstream. Her kids are a breeze. Silverstream herself was also covered in a previous video, the Blue Stars family tree one. Long story short, she's basically the same as Millie's original canon-based genome, the silver one, except she's black instead of lilac. That means she has at least one capital D and at least one capital B. Due to her parentage, she also ended up carrying chocolate, dilute, classic, and long hair, and she's buff, but we don't have a gene for that. I also had to give her green eyes for the same reason as Briarlight earlier. Feathertail is described as a silver tabby. I'm taking her, quote, plumy tail to mean that she's also long hair. Wiki doesn't specify, but I've always imagined Feathertail as a blue-silver tabby, so that's what I'm going with. She's also depicted as mackerel in the mangas, and it makes her look like her mom, so we're going with that. She's going to get a capital B from either parent and a capital A from either parent. There's no reason Graystripe can't carry capital MC under his tict, but for the drama, I'll give her Silverstream's capital MC. So that we can actually see that capital MC, Graystripe is giving her his only little TA. Silverstream only has little TAs, so that works out perfect. No tick for Feathertail. She's getting Silverstream's capital I to make her silver. To dilute her black into blue, Graystripe's all little Ds, and Silverstream has a secret carried one that she can pass along too, letting Feathertail be homozygous here. Similarly, Graystripe's nothing but long hair little L's, and Silverstream passes along her carried little L. Happily, easily long hair. Feathertail has, quote, sky blue eyes in canon. Graystripe has some white to give, and white isn't too disruptive on silver tabbies, but I feel like the important thing here thematically is having the same eye color as her mom. Silverstream's got changed to green, so Feathertail's getting the same. Stormfur's a solid dark gray cat. He's both blue and long hair via the same means as Feathertail. However, since he's not smoke, he's getting Silverstream's carried little eye, as well as one of Graystripe's little eyes. No inhibitor for Stormfur. No Agouti either. Thankfully, both Graystripe and Silverstream are happily carrying little A's to give to their bouncing baby boy. Like I said, we don't know eye color genetics, but just like how I make a point of giving Feathertail her mom's eye color, I make a point of giving Stormfur his dad's eye color. He's described as having hints of silver on his muzzle, but I think that's age. I don't remember that in the books where he's young, and his wiki pre-Caveguard sprites don't have pale muzzles. If I'm wrong, if I'm misremembering and his muzzle's supposed to be lighter genetically, then, get him, Graystripe Cecilio! But I'm pretty sure he's just old. Holy fuck, he's still alive? Nice. The nightmare is over. My family is safe. Graystripe's family tree can't hurt me. Pour one out for Millie's awful ruined genotype. Pour one out for all the times I accidentally typed Gaystripe while writing the script. I'm going to go take a long, hot bath and think about my life choices. Next time, I'll have an absolute blast with Yellowfang. I'm taking her genome to Las Vegas and we're gambling for insane genotypes. It's gonna rule. I'll see you there. Until then, bye-bye!